She was pregnant with him, while on trial for conspiracy to bomb department stores and kill police officers. 21 years later, her son would become the most dangerous voice in America, and everything he stood for, the rage, the poetry, the revolution, came from the woman who raised him, while the world tried to destroy them both. Bronx, New York, April 16th, 1969. The courtroom is packed with reporters, federal agents, and spectators who came to see if America will execute a pregnant Black Panther. Afeni Shakur sits in the defendant's chair, 8 months pregnant, representing herself against 156 felony charges that could send her to prison for life or to the electric chair. She's 22 years old, brilliant, and absolutely fearless. The prosecutors think they're trying a terrorist. They don't understand they're creating a legend. Alice Faye Williams became Afeni Shakur when she joined the Black Panther Party at 19, trading her birth name for one that means beloved in Yoruba. She grew up in the projects of the Bronx, daughter of a single mother who cleaned white people's houses to keep food on the table. Smart enough to skip grades, angry enough to see through the lies the system tells about opportunity and merit and the American dream. The FBI has been watching her since she was 20. Phone taps, surveillance photos, infiltrators in her meetings. They know she's dangerous, not because she plants bombs, but because she thinks, speaks, organizes. Because she can stand in front of a crowd and explain exactly how the system works, who benefits from keeping Black people oppressed, and what real revolution looks like. The Panther 21 trial is a setup from the beginning. Arrested in coordinated raids, charged with conspiracy to commit acts they never committed, held on impossible bail amounts designed to keep them locked up until trial. The government's strategy is simple: destroy the most effective Black Panther organizers in New York by any means necessary. But Afeni refuses to be destroyed. While pregnant and facing death, she studies law, 12 hours a day in her jail cell, reading case precedents, constitutional law, criminal procedure. She fires her court-appointed lawyers and represents herself, not because she's arrogant, but because she understands that no one will fight for her freedom as hard as she will. The baby growing inside her kicks while she writes motions, moves while she cross-examines FBI agents who've been spying on her for years. This child, not yet born, is already being shaped by his mother's refusal to surrender, her willingness to fight impossible odds, her belief that truth matters more than safety. During the trial, Afeni dismantles the government's case with surgical precision. She exposes FBI informants who lied under oath, men who infiltrated the Panthers, fabricated evidence, and testified to crimes that never happened. She reveals illegal surveillance that violated her constitutional rights, wiretaps installed without warrants, photographs taken through her apartment windows, agents following her to grocery stores and doctor appointments. She proves that the conspiracy charges are based on fabricated evidence and perjured testimony, not with theatrics or emotion, but with facts, logic, and an understanding of the law that impresses even the prosecutors trying to destroy her. She cross-examines FBI agents who've been spying on her for years, forcing them to admit under oath that she never committed any violent acts, never planned any bombings, never did anything except attend meetings and speak publicly about civil rights. The courtroom becomes her classroom. Every day, she teaches observers about systemic oppression, about how the government uses the legal system to silence dissent, about what real patriotism looks like when your country is committing crimes against its own people. She explains the difference between legal and just, between law and justice, between order and freedom. Her closing argument, delivered while 9 months pregnant, becomes legendary in civil rights history. For 2 hours, she speaks without notes, weaving together constitutional law, revolutionary theory, personal experience, and political analysis. She explains how the government targeted the Panthers, not because they were violent, but because they were effective, not because they threatened individual lives, but because they threatened an unjust system that depends on Black people accepting their oppression. "We are not on trial for criminal conspiracy," she tells the jury. "We are on trial for believing that Black people deserve the same rights as white people, for organizing our communities, for refusing to accept second-class citizenship in the country of our birth. If that is conspiracy, then the Constitution itself is a conspiracy document." On May 13th, 1971, the jury acquits all defendants on all charges. Complete victory. Afeni has beaten the United States government while pregnant, representing herself, with no formal legal training. She walks out of that courtroom, knowing she's capable of anything. 1 month later, June 16th, 1971, Tupac Amaru Shakur is born, named after an 18th-century Peruvian revolutionary who fought Spanish colonialism. This child enters the world carrying the weight of his mother's expectations and the legacy of her struggle. From birth, Tupac is raised to be a revolutionary, not a soldier, a thinker. Afeni fills their apartment with books. Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, James Baldwin, Maya Angelou, Pablo Neruda. By age 3, Tupac can recite poems by Langston Hughes. By age 5, he's reading above grade level and asking questions about why some people have everything, while others have nothing. But the revolution doesn't pay rent. The FBI destroyed Afeni's life, even though they couldn't convict her. Blacklisted from employment, followed by agents, harassed by police. Every job application rejected. Every apartment application denied. The victory in court was just the beginning of a different kind of war, economic warfare, designed to break her spirit and destroy her family. By 1975, Afeni is struggling with heroin addiction. The strongest woman Tupac knows becomes a ghost in their apartment, nodding off at the kitchen table, disappearing for days at a time. The revolutionary who beat the federal government can't beat the needle, can't escape the pain of watching her dreams die one day at a time. This is when Tupac learns his most important lesson. Strength and vulnerability aren't opposites. They live in the same person, sometimes at the same time. His mother is both the bravest person he's ever known and the most broken, both a hero and a victim, both someone to admire and someone to save. At 6 years old, Tupac is cooking his own meals. Mac and cheese from a box, peanut butter sandwiches, whatever he can manage on a hot plate when the stove gets repossessed. He walks himself to school through neighborhoods where dealers and addicts nod at him with recognition, where everyone knows he's Afeni's son, the little boy who takes care of himself while his mama fights her demons. He learns to lie to teachers about why his clothes smell like smoke, why he falls asleep in class, why he doesn't have lunch money. Pride becomes survival skill. Never let them see you broken. Never give them reason to take you away from the only family you have. Never admit that home is sometimes scarier than the streets. But even in chaos, Afeni maintains their intellectual life. Their apartment might not have electricity, but it has books, shelves lined with everything from children's picture books to revolutionary manifestos. When she's high, Afeni disappears mentally. When she's sober, she's the most engaged parent any child could want. She reads to him every night she can, explaining difficult words, connecting stories to real life, teaching him that knowledge is the only thing no one can steal from you. During her lucid periods, Afeni transforms their kitchen table into a classroom. She teaches Tupac about African history, kingdoms and empires that existed before slavery, scientists and philosophers and artists whose contributions were erased from white history books. She explains the economics of oppression, how systems benefit some people by harming others, why their poverty isn't personal failure but political design. The system wants you angry but not organized, she tells him during one of her lucid moments, sitting across from him at their rickety table while he eats cereal for dinner. They want you loud but not strategic. They want you to blame individuals instead of understanding institutions. They want you to think your mama's addiction is a moral failing instead of understanding how crack got into our neighborhoods and why there's no treatment available for people who look like us. Don't let them use your pain against you. Transform it into power. At age 8, Tupac writes his first poem. It's about watching his mother cry when she thinks he's asleep, about understanding that she's not weak, she's wounded, about promising to be strong enough for both of them. Afeni finds the poem and cries for 3 hours, not from sadness, but from recognition. Her son has inherited her gift for transforming pain into art, anger into analysis. They move constantly, New York to Baltimore to Oakland, always one step ahead of eviction notices, always searching for a place where Afeni can get clean and Tupac can find stability. Each city teaches him something different. New York shows him where he comes from. Baltimore shows him that intelligence matters as much as toughness. Oakland shows him that revolution is still alive, still necessary, still dangerous. In Baltimore, Tupac attends the Baltimore School for the Arts, where he studies poetry, theater, and dance alongside kids from completely different backgrounds. For the first time, he meets white teenagers who see him as an artist, not a threat. He discovers Shakespeare, performs in school plays, writes constantly. His teachers recognize genius, not just intelligence, but the ability to see connections that others miss. But poverty follows them everywhere. Tupac wears the same clothes to school every day, sleeps on floors when they can't afford furniture, watches his mother trade food stamps for drug money. The contrast between his artistic education and his daily reality creates the tension that will define his later music. The ability to speak both languages, to bridge different worlds, to be equally comfortable in concert halls and on street corners. Afeni's addiction gets worse, disappears for weeks, leaving Tupac to fend for himself. He learns to forge her signature, to talk to landlords and school officials, to act older than his years because someone has to be the adult. The responsibility ages him, but it also strengthens him. He develops the hyper-awareness that will later make him a great artist, the ability to read people, situations, and power dynamics with startling accuracy. At 15, Tupac moves to Oakland with Afeni, who's attempting another recovery. Oakland in the mid-1980s is ground zero for crack epidemic, gang violence, and police brutality. It's also where the Black Panther Party was born, where revolution still echoes in the streets. Tupac absorbs all of it, the despair and the defiance, the destruction and the determination to survive. He starts performing at local venues, mixing poetry with music, creating something new that nobody has heard before. His lyrics are different from other rappers, more political, more personal, more willing to show vulnerability alongside strength. He raps about loving his mother, despite her addiction, about understanding systemic oppression while living in its effects, about being angry at society without losing hope for change. But success doesn't come immediately. Tupac spends years grinding, performing for free, sleeping on couches, watching his mother cycle through recovery and relapse. Each disappointment hardens him a little more, teaches him that talent isn't enough, that the industry doesn't care about art or message, only profit and image. When Digital Underground gives him his first break, Tupac treats it like the opportunity of a lifetime. He studies every aspect of the music business, builds relationships, develops his craft, but he never forgets where he comes from or who raised him to be. His debut solo album, Tupacalypse Now, is essentially Afeni's political education set to hip-hop beats, songs about police brutality, teenage pregnancy, and systemic racism. The FBI takes notice, putting Tupac under surveillance just like they did his mother 20 years earlier. As Tupac's fame grows, so does his understanding of what his mother went through. The constant scrutiny, the death threats, the feeling that any mistake could destroy everything you've built. Fame amplifies everything. The platform to speak truth, but also the consequences for speaking it. Afeni gets clean in 1991, finally winning her two-decade battle with addiction. She sees her son becoming everything she hoped, an artist who doesn't compromise his message, an activist who uses his platform for something bigger, a man who transforms pain into power. But she also sees the danger. Tupac's success makes him a target from rival artists, from law enforcement, from a society uncomfortable with young black men who refuse to stay in their assigned roles. The night before Tupac is shot in Las Vegas, he calls his mother. They talk for an hour about everything and nothing. Family, music, plans for the future. Afeni doesn't know it's goodbye, but she hears something in his voice that worries her. "I love you, Ma," he says before hanging up. "Everything I am, I learned from you." 6 days later, Tupac dies in a Las Vegas hospital, and Afeni loses the person who made every struggle worthwhile. But his death doesn't end their story. It transforms it. Afeni spends the next 2 decades protecting Tupac's legacy, ensuring that his message survives. She establishes the Tupac Shakur Foundation, dedicated to arts education. She oversees posthumous albums. She fights legal battles to maintain control of his estate. Most importantly, she continues the work she started in that Bronx courtroom, fighting for justice, speaking truth to power, refusing to surrender. Tupac's music becomes the soundtrack to her continued revolution. In interviews, Afeni always returns to the same theme. Tupac wasn't just her son. He was the completion of work she started before he was born. Every song he recorded, every message he delivered, that was her revolution continuing through him. "People ask me how I raised a son like Tupac," she says. "I didn't raise a son like Tupac. I raised Tupac to be exactly who he became. Someone who could see injustice and speak against it. Someone who could transform suffering into art. Someone who understood that real strength means fighting for others. The woman who beat the federal government while pregnant raised the son who would challenge an entire system through his music." Their story isn't just about family. It's about what happens when revolution becomes legacy, when one generation's fight becomes the next generation's fight. Afeni Shakur proved that the most dangerous thing in the world isn't a weapon or an army. It's a woman who refuses to surrender, raising a child who refuses to be silent.